In this lesson, we'll explore the machine definition and control definition files that come with Mastercam. As you can see here, we have nothing in our Toolpaths Manager. So I'm going to go up to Machine, and I'm just going to pick the default machine. And that default machine is called Mill Default. And what happens is when you pick a machine inside of Mastercam, it creates a copy of it, and that copy exists only in this current Mastercam file. So if I close out of this file and then open up a new file and pick this machine again, it will be a different copy from what's in this current file. And as an example, if I go into this toolpath copy, and you can see it says machine toolpath copy here, I can click edit. And let's just change this name. We'll call it training test. And when I click OK, and then OK again, you'll notice that the properties of this machine definition in the machine I selected now lists training test. However, if I go back to machine type, I still have the default one here. So the changes made in the operations manager only apply to this particular file. As an example, if we go into the files and I go into edit, and then I drill down into the mill spindle group, all the way down to the spindle, and I double click on the spindle, you'll see that I have a maximum spindle speed here. Let's say this is too high, and let's just say for this example, we can only go a maximum of 5,000 RPM with this current machine. So when I click OK here, and I click OK here, it all gets updated here, which is great because now if I went in and I created geometry, and then let's say I wanted to create a contour, you'll notice that under the tool section I could pick a tool, and this can be any tool really. If I type in a spindle speed of something other than 5,000, let's just say 5,500, it will error out because my control definition is limited to 5,000 because I changed it. But the trick here is I changed it in my toolpath copy. So if I go to File New and pick that same machine again, and then create another rectangle, and create another toolpath, you'll see here that I can change this to 5,500 without any issues. And the reason is because when I went into the machine definition and I changed the spindle speed, I changed it in the toolpath copy. And those changes do not change the default disk copy. However, an interesting concept to think about is if you wanted to adjust some of your parameters inside your machine definition file, you can do it at the local toolpath copy level. And that way, if you make a mistake or make a change that you don't want, it only affects this particular file and not the default disk copy file. To navigate to the disk copy, we'll go to Machine and we can select Control Definition or Machine Definition from the Job Setup group. Now what this will do is since I have a machine selected, it's going to open up the disk copy of this machine definition. If I did not have a machine selected, it's going to prompt me to open one. So now I'm editing the disk copy, and so now if I make a change to the spindle group, and I change this to 5,000 RPM, it's going to say you have made changes to the machine definition since the last time you saved it. Save the changes to this file. I say yes. Now I changed the machine definition for the disk copy, and it's asking me now, do I want to update my local toolpath copy with those changes? And if I say yes, now the change I made to the disk also is in this toolpath copy. So now that we understand the differences between the file copy and the disk copy, let's go into the machine definition so we can see what some of the things are that can be changed. For example, you have your machine configuration here. So you have a table group, a spindle group, and a tool changer group. Each one of these has a multitude of options that you can add to it. As an example, let's just say you wanted to add to the spindle an aggregate. Well, you can select an aggregate over here and drag it over, and now it will be added to your tool spindle. And for each one of these, you can go in and you can set the values of your axes and your other parameters, just like I did for the spindle you saw. As another example, for the tool changer, you can go in and tell it how many tools it holds. You can also go into the table group and you have various axes you can look at, and you can define the travel limits of these axes. From the machine definition, we can access the control definition. Inside the control definition, we have various options that we can set that will change the output of your G-code. So as an example, you can modify some of the tolerances or how we handle various arcs in the mill environment. For example, do we allow arcs in the XY plane, XZ plane, or YZ plane? How do we handle certain feed moves? All of these things can be set up inside of the control definition. Now notice there's one thing that's not here, is the ability to choose operation defaults. So we get to that area by accessing control definition directly from the machine group. So if I go to control definition, I'm accessing the disk copy of the control definition. And down here we have operation defaults. So for example, if you ever wondered why we have a few thousandths remaining on your facing operation as a default, that's because in the default settings for your 2D toolpaths, specifically under facing, you can go to parameters and you can see that we have a stock to leave on the floors. This is the default setting. So you can change this to 0, and then if you click OK and save this, your new default would now be 0. In all of these toolpaths, you also have default tools set up. So let's just say, as a silly example, you always use a 1/2 inch end mill for contouring. Well, you could put that 1/2 inch end mill right in here, which ironically is what it is, and it would always use that by default, so you'd never have to pick that. But the lesson here is that every toolpath has a set of defaults, and those defaults are needed to create the toolpath unless you change it through the parameters. If you find yourself doing a lot of heavy customization to the machine and control definition files, or if you wish to make changes to it, including the post, I would recommend contacting your reseller, as they may have some suggestions on how to do something specifically for your needs. But in any case, this is a brief overview of the machine and control definition files, and really the takeaway here is to understand that once you pick a machine and it's in your Mastercam file, you have a local or toolpath copy of that machine definition and control definition, and it's separate from the one that exists on the disk. And you can edit them both, but if you edit the toolpath copy, then those changes only exist for that file. If you edit the disk copy, then those changes are impacted on any future toolpath programming you do when you select that machine definition file.